Hello. Good afternoon. Actually, still good morning, LinkedIn. I'm not used to doing things in the morning time, but good morning to everybody on LinkedIn. Thanks to those of us joining us today to talk more about community, my favorite topic, as you all know. And this time, for those who've been joining us a few times, you'll probably notice I put 30-minute LinkedIn Live because we have never hit the 20-minute mark so far. So we are just moving over into saying these are now 30 minutes. But we're just talking about stripping away some of that jargon we hear in the community building space really frequently and talking to community builders who have been doing this a very long time. So I'm Tasha. I run a community called the Nonprofit Hive, which has just been a life-changing moment. And I connected with Carlos actually even before I started the Nonprofit Hive here and through LinkedIn, through mutual friends. And so Carlos is joining us today, beautiful community builder of his own. And I'm going to let him talk about his journey. And those in the comments, if you want to share where you're from, the community you're building, we'd love that as well. But Carlos, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about that community building journey you've been on.
Hello, everyone. So I've been on my community building journey since '96.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
something like that. I started as a moderator in the community, in IRC, Community Talk City. And so I was just doing moderating, learning about community and so forth. Then I got into membership, which is its own kind of community, and being able to understand membership models, subscription, retention, and so forth.
Yeah.
Then I went into the Web3 space, and there I wanted to learn more. And so I joined communities and then started building communities. And so I've sold technology into the space. I've built communities. I have exited communities. I've seen communities grow and die, which we'll talk a little bit about in terms of living organisms. But yeah, I've seen kind of all elements of it. And I think that there's definitely been a common thread through the whole thing.
Which is awesome. And I love that you say there has been a common thread because, I would say, my community building journey, especially compared to yours, has been a little bit more one dimensional within kind of one sector. Although maybe I could argue that I've been building community in the mom space since I became a mother. But, very, very different and not through all these different platforms. So I'm really excited to have you on today to talk about your experience because you have been doing this for quite a long time. So, always love to kick this off because community member folks don't talk about this enough. One project story or moment you've been really proud of in this long career in community building.
So I've helped communities and I've enjoyed it, but the one I'm proudest of is a community I started like 3 years ago, and I'm not even a part of it anymore, but
Okay,
it's still going.
that's
And it
awesome.
was for a metaverse game that I was into, and I found a need. I thought of an idea ahead of functionality being released and everything. I started a Discord group. Everyone thought I was crazy, and we have over 1,000 members consistently for 3 years. It's still going. It's still doing its thing. It's outgrown me, and I love that because to me, that's a successful community.
I love that. It's interesting too because I think often if we're founders of a community, which I'm sure is its own unique subset within the community building space. Although a lot of community builders and community managers I know do kind of have informally started something themselves
Hmm.
at some point, right? Like have seen a need somewhere and started a Facebook group or a Discord channel, something that has meaning to them. But founder led communities and succession planning of those communities, that's like a whole topic in and of itself, right? Like how do you do this, build something and potentially walk away from it? And how does it continue without you?
And to me, that is the key to a successful community. So as we get into it and we start talking, that's I think why it's the community I'm most proud of, because I was able to create an idea, and I still jump in from time to time. And every time I jump in, I feel so welcomed. And it's awesome because I know that that community exists because of an idea I had. I created it, I built it, I brought people in who I knew were going to help nurture it and develop it even beyond what I could do. And knowing that it's in good hands, that it's evolved beyond what I originally intended for it. I mean, that's growth, that's positive, that's amazing.
That's so cool. And we're gonna have to go down this path a little bit, you and I, at some point in the future, because not that I'm anywhere close to stepping away, but I definitely this is something on my mind of like 100% what I'm building is going to outgrow any capabilities I have to make it fulsome,
Excuse
I guess, right? Like to make it what it could be is gonna is not gonna come from only this gal for sure. So I love that. That's really,
And
really cool.
founders tend to be creators, and so they're always moving on to other projects or doing other things, and so for longevity, you need operators.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we can get
Very
into that
cool.
some other time.
No, I know, I love it. I think that's super cool. Do you have a question? Because 'Cause I'm being nosy. Do you have this on your resume somewhere? Like, I feel like that's a thing to have on your resume, Carlos.
It
That's super cool.
No, because it wasn't professional
No, dude, that's the
as
coolest stuff. That's the coolest stuff. Like, to have somebody who has, like, the wherewithal, potentially, like, it takes charisma, potentially it takes, like, that just high level planning to do something like that. I don't know. I think those kinds of skills are actually more important than ever on a resume, those kind of informal building
Ah,
abilities.
I'm gonna have to find a way to do that.
Find a cool thing. I don't know, I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. I think that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, I guess when people start talking about retention, or customer success or something like that, I think I could definitely throw it into that because it does kind of incorporate being able to build a customer success model, being able to build a retention model, and how do you incorporate that into a very diverse global population. I mean, the Discord group that I have is global. I mean, we have members from all over the world.
Yeah,
And so, how do you deal with that? How do you incorporate the different regions, time zones, ways of thinking? I mean, yeah, it's as I think about it, yeah, it isn't. It is.
it's
When you're doing it, and I'm sure you ran into this too, right? When you're
oh,
doing it,
absolutely.
you're just doing it.
You're just doing it. It's the day to day, right? Like I had a moment recently where I'm like pulling in some data, doing a bit of numbers crunching. I still haven't even talked about this out in the world yet. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, so that was country 90. And then I had to go with my daughter and be like, how many countries are there? I don't, because I don't know off the top of my head, right? And so you have this
Yeah,
moment, I think sometimes as community builders where it's an easy role, I think, for imposter syndrome to creep in a bit because you're just doing what you do. And often as a founder, you're doing it because you just love it, right? You love the idea of something like this
yeah.
existing. And I think sometimes you're surprised that other people love it too. You have this moment.
But it's about the connection, right? And
Yeah.
I think some of the other questions will get into this too, but it's about you were able to build a connection with people and then you productized building that connection. And so you were able to deliver that and build a community that built upon itself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So this is great jumping off point because I know we could like go down this road completely. But you know, this long career in this particular community building space, but what's the toughest challenge you see communities facing right now?
I think it's interesting. To be honest, I think it's the same challenge communities have always faced, relevance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And one of the biggest things is connection in that relevance. And as AI tools become available, as chatbots become available, as more and more programming goes into community management, that connection, that relevance can be lost, right? And
absolutely.
so I think that as individuals are looking to build community, they can't lose the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize the fundamentals, right? Like
Yeah,
you have to have fun in there. And so to me, I think that's the biggest challenge is so much technology, so many options, so many different ways of doing it. But if you don't have the fundamentals in place, if you're not taking care of how are you relevant? How are you connecting with people? How are you building one-on-one engagement models that allow for people to communicate and grow, right? How do you
yeah,
create opportunities for your members, your communities to shine, right? Like where's their moments of happiness? Where do you create joy for the people in your community? I think those are the biggest challenges. How do you make it relevant to them?
absolutely. Absolutely. I just have been back in like marketing brain mode, you kind of take on the different hats and really looking at like that interesting intersection of community led marketing, right? Like how marketing becomes community led and what does that look like? And especially as everybody's fighting against algorithm changes all the time and looking for ways to like protect themselves against some of these different technology rhythms that come and go in our world. Community is a weird spot, right? Because you can there is some buffer ability from some of these pieces, but a lot of people don't understand how that works. And I'd written a post slash article yesterday just about like we're all chasing virality, but like what does it actually look like to have something go viral? It's usually because it's like really raw and authentic and super vulnerable. And that's a fear often, I think, that when a fear of mine, I guess I have sometimes of automation taking away the ability to have some of that vulnerability and authenticity. And you're kind of like community will just have to like buffer that, or you have to be looking at that all the time. And I love the fundamentals. I think I'm gonna have to find somewhere to use that afterwards. It may work its way into the title of this eventually on YouTube, because I think you've hit on something really critical there, that people are coming into community for a bunch of different reasons, but one of them can and maybe should be to find joy, right? And fun. Like we need more of that.
I mean, even if you're coming into network, you're networking so you can do something better for yourself, so you can have joy in your life, right? So in the bottom, in the end, it might be kind of down the line, but part of it is how, creating some joy, some safety for your family or whatever it might be, but you're joining a community for a reason, and that reason should in some ways be associated with fun, because when people have fun, they hang out, they stay, they participate.
Yeah, they do participate. And I think a lot of people are looking for places to participate more. But if it's totally focused in on, that likes, clicks, all of that is your metrics, the only metrics you're measuring, that becomes pretty problematic, I think, for where community is aiming towards, or why people are coming into community in the first place.
And maybe this is another challenge that communities are facing. Marcom is technology is becoming the thing. Like I
Yeah.
see the future of almost everything going into Marcom, right? Marketing communications technology.
Yeah.
And when you start putting community into Marcom categories, one of the things about marketing, it's, they always say it's not marketing unless it's measurable, right?
Yeah.
How do you measure fun? How do you measure connectness, connectivity, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you measure? It's not going to be someone, how many likes something got, or how many times they responded to a post or something like that. That shows engagement, but not connection.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's so easy to just like something. And now there's even the LinkedIn tools that allow you to just like auto comment on certain things that exist, right? So I think even engagement is getting more confusing as an actual indicator of true engagement. It
Yeah.
used to be a little bit more clear cut, but now a lot of these automation tools might be taking some of that away from us.
Well, think about an email, right? So you send out email campaigns and you want to check open rates. Well, there are spam filters and everything that are opening the email to check it. And a lot of the Marcom tech is registering it as an open. And so you send it to them and they never respond because they never really opened it. Right. So it's an engagement metric, but it's not a connection. It's not a real purpose driven type of metric.
Absolutely. Okay, I love this. And we can talk about challenges. Clearly, there's lots of them in this sector, but I know you and I both look at community from a lens of like thinking it's so important and so critical, and it's like just part of something we all need as human beings. But I think what are those like biggest opportunities? Why is connection and belonging something, and community building something we need even more of right now in the world?
Well, I mean, beyond, any, I'm trying to think of how I would phrase this, but I think that what's important in terms of connection and belonging is, one, as humans, that's kind of in our genes, right? Where we almost have that kind of herd mentality. So from an evolution perspective, humans need each other.
Yeah.
On top of that, because of how easy it is to just be behind the screen and not really, I mean, how many people know their neighbors now? In the past, everybody would be riding their bikes all over the place. Now people play and they connect with one or two people on a game or on a computer, and that's kind of their world in some
Yeah.
ways. And so being able to create other venues from a younger generation to an older generation for people to connect, I think help feeds the soul, right? And so it might sound corny, but it is part of finding that joy. What is the fun element in all this, right? And so I think that in as we have more technology, as we are bombarded by more and more ads, as we're productized more and more as individuals, the idea of belonging and connection becomes even more critical to maintaining humanity.
Yeah. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. And I know you are a tech enthusiast, often an early adopter, getting in there and everything. And it must feel at times I'm not particular. Actually, I shouldn't say this. I keep saying, "Oh, I don't know technology stuff," and our mutual friend Tim Lockie is frequently like, "What the heck are you talking about?" Because there is a lot of things that I get in there as someone in Marcom. You you tend to be a little bit ahead of the curve on certain technologies because that's part of what you need to do in order to reach audiences. But it is an interesting tension point to exist in right now where the thing we know we need in community often doesn't feel that scalable and the tech feels scalable. So I think that like it just creates this like push and pull in communities pretty regularly that, you know, there's lots of completely dead Slack channels out there with
But
thousands of people in them, right? And how do we manage that and call it community still?
well, and I think that that's the thing is that I think as technology is evolving, right, there's more and more ways of leveraging technology to deliver engagement and connection, right? And so I don't think that it's an either or, and I don't think that they're opposing. I think that they can be synergistic, right? And
Mm,
so an example, I think what you've done with Community Hives, right, where you took the idea of being able to do this one-on-one conversations and productized it,
yeah,
right? And so it's important to look at technology from the perspective of how does it deliver on strategy and that human value, not just how does it scale, uh, or yeah, how does it scale projection of a message or something like that, right? You don't
yeah.
want to just amplify something. You want to really kind of create connection, not just amplify.
I think community also, or I've seen this across many spaces, is community is really anybody who thinks, "Hey, we're gonna build a community and it's gonna make us insanely wealthy," I think you've probably already missed the boat, right? Like, that's it, it brings a wealth of a different kind, but a financial
Yeah,
one, probably
no,
not the thing.
not
But
at all.
I do think there is a bit of that, like, analog renaissance of people looking at community is something valuable enough to put the time and effort into, but some of these like quick win technology pieces that are great for the community builder when we're planning to scale and get huge, have 10,000 members. Do we need to like we sometimes have to be asking the really tough questions about communities to go, actually, our community is amazing at 1,000 people and it feels really deep at 1,000 people. And this tech that we're using right now is amazing with 1,000 people. What does it mean and why are we looking at 10,000? Because I think that is a question we're not asking ourselves enough as community builders because we're kind of treating it like we do a startup that you're going to sell off in how long, right? Or we that
Yeah.
transactional nature.
And one of the things I like to have people think about is, you were saying maybe I haven't been a community builder or my community building is limited, but you had a mom's group, right? So if you start thinking about you build communities around yourself all the time, D&D players, right?
Yeah.
Uh, soccer moms, honor kids, PTA stuff. Like there's communities you engage in all the time, and the communities that you participate in the most. If you start thinking about why you participate in those communities, It'll help you think about why a community you're working on might actually be of value. And when you start thinking about those physical communities, giving circles, whatever it might be, right? Now you start thinking about not the technology, but what is the community's purpose? Why does it exist? And that is what you need to bring in. And I was talking about this with someone, Jim Collins. I love Jim Collins. I talk about him all the time. And the hedgehog flywheel principle,
Yep.
that one community I was really proud of, we had a very specific hedgehog. And, for those that know, it was about the racing economy in Upland, right? It was a community built for the racing economy in Upland, very specific. But I knew as soon as the community was created, I was going to have copycats, competitors, and so forth, right? And so I built it with the purpose of being very open ended, right? So that
Yeah.
I can attract everyone, but it was very focused and I knew its purpose and the people I attracted were there for that purpose, right? Just like if you're part of a giving circle, you're there for a reason. If you're in the PTA, you're there for a reason. What's your reason? And then once you have that core, you can use the flywheel to expand. And that's where technology comes in. So don't think about technology until you're past your hedgehog.
I love that. Okay, I'm gonna have to find some, like, maybe afterwards you just send me like the link and I can like put it in so people can check it out afterwards. But this has been awesome already. And see, we're already over the 20-minute mark. That's why I should never say it's only 20 minutes. But I know you have some great advice. You've already given some brilliant pieces of it during this conversation so far. But if you were to give advice to someone either getting into community or who has been in the space for a while but is looking at it and wondering why it's not yielding the same kind of returns, or I know many of us community builders work for organizations, products, things like that, that really, like, the community is meant to be a sales vehicle as part of an attached piece. Like, what would you say to somebody like that's looking at community and going, well, either I want to do this or I'm trying to figure out how to make this successful? What's the advice you'd give them?
um, Start with your purpose. What is your mission statement, right? Like a lot of times communities start because they just, oh, I love this idea and I just want to start bringing like-minded people together, right?
Yeah.
Well, do you have a mission statement? Do you have a vision statement? Do you have a six-word story for it? Like whatever you want to call it, right? What's your purpose, right? That becomes your hedgehog. And anything that distracts from that hedgehog is noise that is going to actually add weight. It's going to anchor your community down, right?
Yeah.
And as people start focusing on scaling and growing, and they start looking, well, oh, this is really popular, and we bring this in, it dilutes the purpose, and therefore um, you're not authentic, and
Yeah.
that comes through.
I definitely think when we're not being authentic in community, and maybe we just need another word, right? Like, I was talking to somebody the other day about community building and we're having a great conversation, and they're like, this word is feeling really loaded lately. And I think that is a bit of a symptom right now. Is it's being used to cover so many different instances, almost, you want to say, of how people are using it. Sometimes it's a tool, sometimes it's a group and a gathering of like-minded humans. But it is making it really challenging, I think, to build belonging in, and use I think people still do have an expectation when they hear the word community of belonging, like those words are really interlinked. And when they get there and they don't have that sensation, what does that mean as well?
Exactly. And I know we've talked before about community little c big C, right?
Yeah.
And the difference and it is true. I mean, community is a verb, I think is what you've said before,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
an ongoing action.
It is. It is ongoing, and it really actually, um, I don't think you need to be exhausted in community, and that's something I'm working on a more personal scale right now, because it is really founder-led community growth is its own, I'm sure you can speak to this with your own experience. It can be something you sink a lot of heart and soul and mind into. And you also want your community to have some of that feel as well. And
Mhm.
you gave some great advice, mission, vision, all of those different pieces I think are really, really important as you're starting to get in there, and maybe even reevaluating it if you're finding you're not hitting what you expected to with community. But
And a
It
lot of times
is.
it's
Yeah.
because they fenced it too, right? So,
Yeah.
try to find a way to have your hedgehog, but what's your flywheel? Like, how do you make it so that it's flexible enough to evolve, grow beyond the founder?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is fantastic, Carlos. I always love chatting with you about some of these things. Great advice too, because I think this is a hot topic and everyone wants community and everyone's looking at it like, oh, well, I have to do a community. And if you're just thinking you're gonna spin up your circle, Discord, Slack, all of those things, and magically it's going to happen. I would really caution people to just, throw themselves at it. It's definitely a thought. There's a thought process behind it.
Yep.
How can people get a hold of you after this, Carlos? What's the way that you'd like people to reach out and connect after this brilliant conversation? Because I always know people sometimes look and I can throw it into the comments afterwards. How can people get in touch?
LinkedIn, it really is a great way for me to connect with people and, just chat about anything. Mostly I work with associations, but
Okay.
uh, community building and other elements, I love to talk. So I'm always open to just a conversation, chatting with anyone and everyone who wants to. Wait,
Well,
maybe I
and if
shouldn't
it,
say
there's,
that.
I was going to say, are you sure you want
Your
to
group
say
has
it?
gotten
Like,
big.
I was gonna say out to the world on YouTube
Yeah.
slash LinkedIn. But the other thing I would say too is for those folks who, if community and D&D is your like lovely intersection of life, you should absolutely also connect and talk with Carlos, who always has fun messages he sends me about Dungeons and Dragons, which I appreciate and keeps my head still back in the game. But thank you so much for joining me today and just having a quick conversation about, just one of my favorite topics. And I know you have such a unique perspective and, just seeing community building over this many years and just the evolution is I think really important because sometimes we have to look backwards at where we've been in order to like really figure out where we're headed to.
Well, and like I said at the beginning, I love that there's been a throughput, right? It's always there. As much as everything has changed, things have still stayed the same because humans still are the same in that we need connection.
Absolutely. Okay, this was great. Thanks so much for joining me today. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your lunchtime, and thanks for having this conversation with me today, Carlos. Love talking about community with you.
Love it. Thank you.